IHMA is keen on working in to improve the quality of the profession as well as helping the members to improve their practice. There is a division of IHMA called School of Homeopathy, which is mostly into training and in research. Most NCCP trains the homeopaths of practitioners and also the students who are preparing for the PG. IHMA is now conducting during this lockdown period various webinars, and this is one among them, and we are about to start the webinar today, today's webinar, A Bird Eye View on Pediatric Examination. I invite Dr. Sneha Pradeep to deliver a formal welcome address and introduce the faculty. Thank you. Dr. Sneha? Dr. Sneha?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. I now, yeah. Am I audible? Hello?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Can I start?
No. Now I invite Dr. Sneha Pradeep for a formal welcome address and to introduce the faculty. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Hello, doctors. Good afternoon, all. And I am Dr. Sneha Pradeepan on behalf of Indian Homeopathic Medical Association, Kannur District, to welcome you all for the webinar. First and foremost, I would like to welcome Dr. Aifuna Rahman, PS. Welcome, doctor. And
Thank you, Dr.
also I welcome all the doctors who are present now for the webinar. Now, for the present session, let me introduce our faculty. Our faculty, Dr. Aifuna Rahman, PS, BHMS MD scholar. She finished her graduation from Fadamullah Homeopathic Medical College, Mangaluru in 2014. Presently doing her post-graduation on homeopathy in pediatrics in Government Homeopathic Medical College, Bengaluru. She is an educator at Friend of Health YouTube channel and has got 5 years of clinical experience in her own clinic and under the Department of Homeopathy, Government of Kerala. Today she is led by the topic, Pediatric Examination, Bird Eye View of All Systems with DDs. I invite Dr. Aifuna PS to start the session. Before that, I once again welcome all the doctors to the session. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Sneha. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, doctor, you're audible.
Okay, shall I start?
Sure, please.
Hello. Respected IHMA leaders and my dear doctors and my friends. So today I'm going to deal with bird eye view on pediatric examination. So before going to the session, I would like to thank IHMA for giving this opportunity and this wonderful platform today. IHMA was always there as a pillar of support and guidance throughout my professional journey. I could attend PSC coaching, competitive examination coaching, and even national and state seminars during the past years, which helped me a lot to boost my confidence as a homeopath. And I would like to thank IHMA Kannur District Chapter and Dr. Dibu CS for this webinar series for inviting me here. So let's begin the session. Now going to the pediatric examination. Before going to the session, let me ask you something. Why a child come to consult a doctor? So we'll make the session little bit lively, and I would like to ask you people also contribute. Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah. So the first thing I would like to tell you here is why a child come to consult a doctor. What would be the most important reasons that a child come to consult a doctor? Can anyone tell? You know, there are many reasons, but what are the most important things for that the child come to consult a doctor? Can anyone tell?
in the chat box, many replies are coming. Dr. Fijila has said,
Yeah.
colic. Dr. Kateni Sheikh.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, of course.
Crying, toothache, fever, pain,
Yes.
dental problems, earache,
Yes.
not eating food, pain,
Yes.
cough,
Thank you,
irritability,
doctors. Yeah,
constipation,
yes.
worms,
Thank you,
diarrhea.
doctors, for the response. Yeah. Yeah, of course. These are the possible reasons. And let's see what are the most important things with the patient or a parent can come to the doctor with their child. Mostly they come with some acute illness, for example, respiratory illness, otitis, some acute diarrheal disorders, some kind of maybe some crying baby, then with some chronic illness for confirming the chronic illness, maybe even for investigation they come. And about developmental delay, they come with developmental delay. Then advice on immunization also they used to come to us. Then for assuring about the normality, these are the most important reasons for that a child come to consult a doctor. Then coming to the ages of pediatrics, hope you all are aware about it, but let's refresh our memories. So coming to the neonatal period, anyone knows from which age to which age a baby is called as a neonate? Okay, I'll tell. So neonate age starts from birth till 28 days. Then coming to the infancy, from 28 days to 1 year of age, a baby is called as an infant. And toddlerhood starts from 1 year to 3 years. And a preschooler starts from 3 to 6 years. Then the school child from 3 to 12 years. And 12 to 18 years, a pediatric child is known as an adolescent. So these are the ages of pediatrics. Hope you all are aware about it. So this is what I told. Newborn or the neonate, infant, toddler, children, adolescent. Now there is something called 3 pillars of diagnosis. So what is this 3 pillars of diagnosis? Under this, we have first thing is history, then comes the investigation, then come our physical examination. So these are the 3 pillars of diagnosis. So let's move to the history taking. Before that, I would like to tell something about the, okay, let's move to the history. So what about the mothers? So mothers are the best observer. Usually a child comes to a clinic with their parents, but the mothers give best history about the child. Maybe they will be uneducated mother, but they know better about their offspring, better than their other parents. So we should listen to the mother well, so that you will get number of symptoms, even though the mother is not educated one, and they may tell more, they may speak a lot, but you should patiently listen to the mother. By experience, you will understand how to tackle with such parents. And coming to this, how to deal with a loquacious mother. Sometimes the mother goes from the topic. So with experience, you will understand how to deal with this mother. Then how to frame question to take history. For example, some parents, as I told, they speak a lot. Some parents speak a lot. Now, how to frame questions with such parents? You can ask, how is your baby at home? And what sort of fellow he is. Like that question you should frame, so that you will get all the history, which helps you in diagnosing the case, and also in coming to the constitution of the case, which helps us in diagnosing the constitution totalities. Now, next thing is keywords. This is something which is really interesting and which helps you to diagnose the case. For examples, this is not clue words, this is keywords. Keywords means some patient may tell, doctor, my baby drinks a lot of water. I don't know what is the reason. You may think like, okay, the patient is thirsty. I will give I'll give ARS, I'll give Bryonia. But no, there is something, some causes that you can think of polydipsia. Polydipsia means there will be some cause like diabetics insipidus. So you have to rule out such cases in this case. Then, for example, some patient may say, doctor, my baby doesn't like biscuits, maybe my baby doesn't like bread, etc. So you can think about gluten enteropathy. So like this, there are more number of keywords. Please make a note about it and keep it with you. And how to deal with exaggerating mothers. some parents or mothers may come and tell you, my baby, he doesn't eat at all. He doesn't like this food. He is losing weight like anything. But at many a times you have seen the babies munching some biscuits, some chocolates in front of you. That means baby's appetite is good. The mother is not satisfied with that. So you should be tricky enough to understand this kind of cases. Now about sample history, for example, most of the pediatric cases will be diagnosed with the history itself. It is estimated that around 80% of pediatric cases we can diagnose with history itself. Only thing is you have to be careful in eliciting the history. As our Elizabeth Wright told, a well-taken case is half cured. So for example, a patient of 12-year-old came with complaint of nocturnal cough who has seasonal variation and also complaints of wheezing and recurrent attack of this complaint which comes in the seasonal variation. So what could be the possible diagnosis? Yes, the diagnosis is bronchial asthma. So like this, you have to deal the case depending upon the history. Now, in the history, there is something called health strategy. Health strategy means H for history, E for evaluation, L for logical deduction. So this is what I would like to tell you in history. And we should ask, in pediatric cases, you have to ask feeding history, weaning, a full pediatric history you should take. Without that, you should not finish off pediatric case taking. Now, next thing is how to approach a child. You should be very tricky while managing a child, because every child will not come to you directly. They will not allow to touch you, because directly you should not go and examine a child. They might not be comfortable with you. For example, a patient, a neonatal case, if they have come to you, you should be careful when you examine a neonate. When you undress a neonate, see that whether the neonate is warm enough. Never undress the neonate, and whenever you undress the neonate, please be quick while examining the neonate. Otherwise, it will catch cold faster. So that is one thing I would like to tell about neonatal examination. Then coming to approaching a child will be sometimes restless. He might not approach you directly. Maybe they might have got some fear during their previous case taking. Previous consulting some allopathic doctors, they have some kind of fear. So you should stop. You should listen to such case, and you can ask history to the mother. Later, let the child be comfortable with you. Then only you can do the examination. So that's what. Then what I would like to tell here is, let the child speak. Sometimes a child has a lot to speak, but the parents will not allow the child to speak. They may have lots and lots of things to tell about their complaint. They will be speaking also, but the parents may say, you keep quiet, let us speak. No, but you should listen to the child. For example, one case of duodenal ulcer came to a doctor, and he asked, what happened to you? The child told, like, I got a pain in my stomach, like a laser being passed through my stomach. So it's brilliant. So like this, the child has lots of things to tell. You should listen to them. So that's what, let the child speak. Now, the children are best approached in their position of comfort. So there are different pediatric age, as we all know. So an infant or a toddler, infant actually their better comfort is lying position, but a toddler's comfort is standing position, sitting position in mother's lap, and the school child position is standing position. So likewise, you have to approach a child. So they have to be approached in their position of comfort. So this is there is something called approach code to the child. As I told earlier, whenever you approach a child, you have to stop. Never go and ask the child directly, or never touch the child directly. You should stop and listen to the child, or listen to the mother what she speaks. Then later only you approach the child. Then look at the child, observe the child. Whenever the patient enters your clinic, there starts the examination. That's what we call general physical examination. So you have to see the appearance of the child, how is the build, what is the attitude of the child, the gait, etc. So that's what, look at the child. And use your sense. Later only use your sense. You can touch the baby, you can examine. The child is comfortable with you, you can start doing the examination. And regarding infant or toddler, they will not allow you to examine. Mostly this infant and this toddler, they will get frustrated when you examine them. Sometimes they even cry. What you have to do, like you can ask the mother the history. Later when the child is comfortable or when the child sleep, you can examine that baby. That's why how to distract the toddler or infant. There are many things how to there are many times we forget to distract the toddler or infant. We directly go and examine. But there are many methods to distract the infant or toddler. You can play with them. You can blow on them. Usually the neonate infants and all, they likes when you blow on their face. Like that and all you can do. And you can give some toys to their hand. Like that you can do with the infant or toddler. So that's what here I will summarize about the history taking. So when the time spent on history taking will be repaid. That's what. If you spend a lot of time in history, it will be repaid. That means in the end you are getting a good history, and also you are getting a good history for your case taking also. For being homeopaths, we give more importance to history taking, case taking. So that if you spend a lot of time in history taking, it will be repaid. Try to ensure that your written notes reflect adequately the time taken and interest shown. Whenever you take the history, try to ensure that you write everything in a systematic and proper way, so that later when you see this, it will be helpful for you for the next follow-ups. Now coming to the pediatric examination proper, we are going to deal with pediatric examination. So in this, we'll be seeing here at the end, we are going to study about, we'll be cleared about the basic concept of pediatric examination and the system which I'll be dealing here, general physical examination. Then comes the respiratory system, vascular system. Then this one, GIT, gastrointestinal system, CNS, and skin. So we'll be dealing with this now. So first we'll see about the general physical examination. Before going to general physical examination, how this pediatric case taking that is different from that of an adult case taking. See, pediatric case taking and adult case taking is almost similar. It differs mainly under 4 headings. For understanding purpose, let's read it under this mnemonic called MAIN. MAIN. M for milestone, A for anthropometry, I for immunization, and N for nutrition. So this is how a pediatric case that is different from that of an adult case. So so whenever you come across a pediatric case, make sure that you ask about the milestone, you do about the anthropometry, and you ask about the immunization and nutrition part. Now let's see about the general physical examination. In general physical examination, first thing what you should see here is general comment of the patient. Whenever the patient enters your clinic, there starts the general physical examination. You have to see the appearance, the attitude of the patient, how the patient looks, whether the patient is sick, whether the patient is dull, and what is the gait of the patient, whether the patient is conscious, whether the patient is drowsy. With all these things, you can rule out different conditions. And with gait and all is actually important. Whenever the patient, you have to see all these things. And vital signs also very important when you deal with the general physical examination. Under vital sign, first thing I would like to tell you is temperature. So temperature includes in infants and neonate, you have to see axillary temperature, not the oral temperature. And in little more elder children, you can see the oral temperature. And never see for rectal temperature. Rectal temperature is only seen in those malnourished children. Malnourished children like infants and all, you can see for the rectal temperature. Then coming to the pulse you have to see for the rate, the character of the pulse and the rhythm, and you have to compare both the sides. See, for example, in case of cardiovascular condition, you get irregularities in the pulse. So in case of coarctation of aorta and all, you get different irregularities in the pulse in the both sides, and even femoral pulse, etc. And all, depending upon the condition, you have to decide what you have to see. Then after that, respiratory rate differs in different ages that you have to see. That hope you all are aware about it. Then BP, blood pressure, actually we don't see for kids. If it is required, yes, of course you have to see. Then under anthropometry, you have to see weight, height, head circumference, chest circumference, etc. Then assessment of development. This is also depending upon the presenting complaint, what the patient complains. If the patient is failure to thrive or patient is malnourished, etc., then you have to take C for the assessment of development. So this all is the clue for the diagnosis. Depending upon the presenting complaint, that you are the one who's deciding what examination you have to do. And also in the vital signs, if you find something in the respiratory rate or something like that, then directly you can go to the respiratory system. And even the general comment, when you see the patient is using accessory muscles of respiration or some kind of precordial bulge or something you find, then depending upon that, you can go to cardiovascular system or respiratory system. And also if the patient has some involuntary movements like tics, some kind of athetosis, etc., then it goes directly to the central nervous system. Now next one is head to foot examination. Head to foot examination include, you have to see the size of the head, whether the patient is having hydrocephalus, you have to see the face, you have to see the eyes, you have to see the tongue, you have to see the character of the hair, whether there is the texture of the hair. Then eyes also, you can see some may comes with bluish sclera. So you get some DDs like osteogenesis imperfecta, Marfan syndrome. And face also, some may present with some hyperpigmented patches, etc. Then you get some clue to this vitamin deficiency. So some basic things about vitamin deficiency, what we get in general comment include, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the disturbance. 1 minute. I'm sorry again for the disturbance. Okay, so from head to foot examination, so what I was telling about is like about the face, about the vitamin deficiency. So there are some clues for the vitamin deficiency. For vitamin A deficiency, you get xerostomia, that is dry eyes, and even night blindness, etc. that you get. Then for vitamin B deficiency, you get angular stomatitis, chelosis, etc. And for vitamin C deficiency, you get the signs and symptoms, signs of scurvy. And all these things you have to see in head to foot examination. Then coming to the face, tongue. Coming to the tongue, you have to see the shape of the tongue, whether there is any coating, whether there is any discoloration like strawberry tongue, etc. You have to rule out. This actually helps in diagnosing the case, and also for giving, it is also a clue for our remedy. As you all know about the map tongue and the triangular red tip and the whitish coating of the tongue. So with this examination, you are getting both homeopathic part and also the diagnostic part. Then next comes skin examination. Never skip skin examination, because under skin you get all the deficiency features and some kind of diseases, eruptions like maculopapular eruption. You have to rule out about measles. Then some petechiae, some hypopigmented patches, which gives about deficiencies. Then some blisters, some vesicles, all these things which comes under skin examination. So general physical examination give you a general idea of the case, which helps you to direct into the systemic examination. Now about height and weight, this is one of the important thing that you should note and you should be aware about it, because usually most of the parents are concerned about their child's growth and height. So you have to be aware about it, and you should know about a rough idea what is the age for different ages. Many times, even to us, many parents had asked, what is the normal age for this age? Usually initial days of our practice, even I also used to give some rough I also had some rough idea, and I never had a correct idea about this. So what you can do, like you can make this you can write down this in a paper and you can stick over your clinic table so that it will be helpful. So whenever a patient come and ask, you can just see and tell them. So let's see about the weight. Ideal birth weight of an infant will be 3.25 kg. So from 3 to 12 months, approximately a baby should gain 300 grams per day. And one more thing, within 1 week, this baby usually loses 10% of their weight. Many times patients come and tell, doctor, my baby lost weight within this 1 week. You can tell that it's normal and baby will gain after 7th day. Okay. Then 5 months, the birth weight should double. Then at first year, the birth weight should triple from the initial birth weight. Okay. So from 1 to 6 years, 2 kg per year. Then 7 to 12 years, 3 kg per year. This is how the weight gain should happen in a normal child. And about height, ideal height of a full-term baby is 50 centimeter. At 3 months, it should be 60 centimeter. 9 months, it should be 70 centimeter. 3 years, it should be 95 centimeter. And from 4 years, it should be 100 centimeter. So after that, a child gain a little over 5 centimeter every year until 10 years. So this is what about height and weight. So you can do what I told before. Now coming to the examination proper. So we will be dealing with respiratory system, CVS, CNS, GIT and skin. Before going to the examination proper, let's see about some of the DDs regarding each system. So under respiratory system, these are the frequently encountered conditions or symptoms we get in our clinic. So we'll see one by one and we'll see what are the DDs for each of the thing. So first thing is cough. So usually many children are come to our clinic with cough. This is the usually encountered symptom which we get. So what could be the possible reason for cough? Can anyone tell? What are the possible DDs that we get usually? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, Doctor. Participants cannot unmute themselves because they are muted by the host. So
okay.
They can the chat box. Okay.
It is there in the chat. Bronchitis of food, asthma, pneumonia, tuberculosis,
very good.
acute bronchitis,
Yes.
RTI,
Very good.
pneumoconiasis,
Yeah.
emphysema, URTA. So many replies are coming in the chat box.
Okay, these are the possible DDs that we get during our clinical practice. So most of the time we get cough, coryza, sneezing. These are the possible signs and symptoms that we come across. So for the most thing is acute bronchitis, then bronchiolitis, then comes COPDs, bronchial asthma, then comes pneumoconiosis, allergic rhinitis, allergic bronchitis, some influenza, some acute bacterial or viral infection. All these are the DDs for cough. And then coryza, sneezing, all these are included in allergic rhinitis, some viral infection, etc. Wheeze is also like our bronchial asthma, and throat pain in case of pharyngitis, laryngitis, etc. Rapid respiration, grunting and all actually a bit serious condition. Usually we don't get, but still we should be aware about it. These are seen in some cases like some serious conditions. And restlessness, cyanosis, all these things are seen in conditions like which are correlated to cardiovascular conditions, and also some COPDs. Then coming to the CVS, we usually see palpitation. Palpitations are mostly seen in valvular heart disease, then cardiomyopathies, etc. Cough is also seen in CVS conditions, for example, mitral stenosis. Then cyanosis we find in congenital heart disease, cyanotic heart disease, etc. Edema we see in cardiomegaly, congestive heart failure. Chest pain is we see in ischemic heart disease, and also some kind of palatetrology, all those congenital illness. So this is the DDs that we usually find in respiratory system and cardiovascular system. Then coming to the gastrointestinal, we usually get kids with and all those things from GIT. So distension, altered taste, halitosis, loose stools, anorexia, constipation. These are the symptoms. So what are the DDs for distension? Include in infants and all, they may get some intestinal obstruction, and also in case of constipation also they come with complaints of distension. Altered taste is actually in those children who are under drugs, who are under some allopathic drugs. In such cases we get altered taste. Then halitosis, which are usually related to some abdominal illness like this one, ulcers, etc. Then loose stools in some acute bacterial infections, some amoebiasis, etc. Then anorexia could be due to some acute viral illness, acute bacterial infections, etc. Constipation also, again, in case of inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, and in case of some intestinal obstruction. Then coming to the central nervous system, see, we are not getting much cases from central nervous system, but we get cases like epilepsy, convulsions. We should be careful when dealing with convulsions and epilepsy. See that whether it is febrile convulsion or whether there are different types of convulsion. As you all know, there are tonic-clonic, clonic convulsion, petechimal or absent seizures, etc. And you should see whether there is an underlying pathology like some tumors, etc. Whether it is physiological, and you have to think about medicine what they takes. And in convulsion, again, we have DDs like some viral infections, I mean meningitis, etc. Then headache is also included here, which include migraine, some tumor, and altered sensorium, muscle weakness, etc. could be seen in some cases like Duchenne muscular dystrophy, then delirium, double vision, tinnitus, etc. are the other symptoms that you find in CNS. Then coming to the skin, bone, muscle and joints. In skin, bones and muscle joints, these are the frequently encountered symptoms which we find. Urticaria, papules, macules, etc. are seen in diseases like measles, papilloscamus eruptions we find in psoriasis, then some case of seborrheic dermatitis, etc. Blisters we find in cases of this one, chicken pox, and even burns, etc. Hypopigmented and hypopigmented patches, as we discussed earlier, in case of vitamin deficiency, then some pityriasis and some fungal infections. And again, coming to the back pain, you should be careful while dealing with. Maybe it is because of some muscle sprain, and also it could be due to some serious conditions like osteomyelitis or some port spine, etc. And next, most of the important symptom that we encounter during our clinical practice, especially in case of pediatrics. Now let's discuss about the examination proper. So coming to the respiratory system examination divided into two parts, like upper respiratory tract system examination and lower respiratory tract system examination. So under upper respiratory tract, we include nose, throat, tonsils, and posterior pharyngeal wall. And under nose, you have to see for turbinates, enlarged turbinates, any polyps, any other things regarding any tumors or etc. You can see for nose. And in case of allergic rhinitis, etc., you should see for the enlarged turbinates. Then in throat, you have to see for tonsils, then one thing I forgot to tell you in general physical examination is about lymphadenopathy. Never ever forget to examine about lymphadenopathy, especially in the anterior and posterior triangles of neck. You have to see for the lymph node, those cervical lymph nodes, occipital lymph nodes, etc. So along with throat, you have to examine for lymph nodes also. Then posterior pharyngeal wall for the pharyngitis, etc. The lower respiratory tract examination include inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. These are the main headings that you should see in the respiratory system. So under inspection, you have to see for the shape of the chest. So we have to see for the shape of the chest. Some patients may have pigeon chest, with pigeon-shaped chest, that is known as pectus carnatum. This is especially seen in rickets. Then there are different abnormalities in chest. By examination, you will know. Barrel-shaped chest. This is not usually seen in children. In elder patients we see, but there are exceptional cases. Like in case of emphysema, we find barrel chest. Then coming to the costochondral bleeding or Harrison sulcus, then localized area of retraction. Some with patients who are having who are using accessory muscles for respiration, who are having severe restrictive lung disease, they may use the areas accessory muscles. Then look at the shoulders, whether there is any drooping of shoulders. Examine the spine. Spine is very important. You should see for spine, for kyphosis, scoliosis, and observe for the respiratory movement. In children, usually they use abdominothoracic respiration. You should be aware about that. Then you have to see for the apex beat. Apex beat you should see in the inspection, whether there is any heaving apex beat, whether there is any shift of apex beat, etc. Then look for trial sign. Trial sign means nothing but you have to see for the trachea, whether it is centrally placed, how to examine it. Using your middle finger, you have to keep it over the suprasternal notch, and the ring finger and the index finger should be kept over the tendon of sternocleidomastoid, and the middle finger should feel for the trachea. If the trachea is there, it is centrally placed. If it is deviated, you can expect for some of the fibrosing changes in the lungs. So that's what the trial sign. Then you can see for any pulsation, any dilated veins, etc. That's what in inspection. Coming to the palpation, you have to confirm the findings of inspection. So whatever findings you find in inspection we are not touching and seeing, we are just observing. So you have to see and confirm the inspection in case of palpation, the findings that you found in the inspection. So in palpation, see for the respiratory movements again. So trachea, in palpation, you have to see for the trachea and position of the apex beat. Position of the apex beat, you have to see where is the apex beat is actually present. And see for tactile vocal pharyngitis. Tactile vocal pharyngitis is nothing but you should ask the child or the patient to repeat 111, and you have to keep your arms on both the sides of the chest, and you can feel for the pharyngitis whether it is equal in the both sides. Then coming to the percussion, what are the areas of percussion? You have to see for the anterior wall of the chest and posterior wall of the chest. Axilla also you have to percuss. And apex beat, where is the apex beat? Apex beat is seen lateral to the midclavicular line in the fourth intercostal space. And you have to see the possible area. You get dullness in the area of the liver, and cardiac dullness is seen 2 to 5th intercostal space. And if you get some extra, other areas, some dullness, you can suspect some cavitation, some fibrosis, etc. And in the posterior wall, where are the areas of percussion? You have to percuss in the suprasternal area, suprascapular area, infrascapular area, and interscapular area. And also in the anterior chest wall, you have to percuss in the supraclavicular area, infraclavicular area, supramammary area, inframammary area, and also in the cardiac area. So these are the areas of percussion. Now coming to the auscultation, see for the breath sounds first. What is the normal breath sound that we hear? That is known as vesicular breath sound. So in vesicular breath sound, we get prolonged inspiration with a short expiration without any gap. That is known as vesicular breath sound. This is what we find in a normal baby. Then other abnormal breath sounds are bronchial breath sound. Then comes bronchovesicular breath sound. In bronchial breath sound, you have a low intensity of the inspiration with the high expiration with a gap. That is known as bronchial breath sound. Then bronchovesicular breath sound, both inspiration and expiration will be, inspiration will be long, expiration will be short without any gap. This is what about breath sound. Then added sounds include rails like a crackling of paper-like sound that you hear in some case of pneumonia, consolidation, fibrosis, etc. Then wheeze or rhongi in case of bronchial asthma. Then comes crepitation. In case of COPD and all, you hear crepitation. Then comes some these are called as foreign sound. Again, some added sounds include whispering petrolachy. These are some whispering type of sound which are heard in consolidation in case of TB. And again, we have something called bronchophony and egophony. Bronchophony is like some vocal resonance sound that you hear in case of pneumonia, but it will be not that audible. It will be a low intensity sound. Then comes the egophony. It will be like a bleating of goat. It is heard in case of some case of fibrosis, etc. So these are the added sound that we usually find in these conditions. Then about vocal resonance, as we told about tactile vocal pharyngitis, you have to ask the patient to say 111, and you have to compare both the side by auscultating. This is called as vocal resonance. Now we'll see about GIT. In GIT, again, we have inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. In inspection, you have to see the shape of the abdomen, and you have to see for the peristaltic movement, see whether there is any extra peristaltic movement, and see for the umbilicus. In umbilicus, you may get some hernia, or you may find some discoloration like Cullen signs in case of portal hypertension, etc. Then, as I told, movement of the abdominal wall. And if you find any extra pulsation, some dilated veins, etc., you have to see in inspection. Coming to the palpation, you have to see for organomegaly. You have to see for the liver, the spleen, any lump, any tumor, etc. You have to palpate and see. You have to see for all quadrants of the abdomen. So quadrant, I will just tell you, we have around so first quadrant in the upper abdomen wall, we have epigastric, hypogastric, and below we have this one, epigastric, hypogastric, and umbilical area. Then left iliac fossa, right iliac fossa. Then up and near to the liver, we have this one. So about palpation, that's all. And then coming to the percussion, you have to see for the dullness, and auscultation, you have to see for the peristaltic sound. Any abnormal peristaltic movement you find, then you have to see that also. Then coming to the CVS, you should give more importance to the pulse, BP, JVP, cyanosis, edema, feet, any edema in the feet, and also something you should see in case of CVS. If you find any abnormalities, you have to note down. Then in inspection, observe for the precordium, then whether there is any precordial bulge, and whether there is any pulsation, any dilated veins, etc. And in palpation, again, you have to see for apex feet, any parasternal heave, and diastolic leg thrills. Thrills is nothing but palpable murmur, and parasternal heave and all is seen in case of cardiomyopathy, etc. In percussion, you see for the heart borders, and if you see any shifting of the dullness, you can think about the whether the heart is dextrocardia or something is there. In auscultation, you have to see for the murmurs and intensity of heart sound. We have actually 4 heart sound. So first heart sound and second heart sound are usually audible. Murmurs, again, we have diastolic, systolic, all the systolic murmurs, pansystolic murmurs, etc. Depending upon the murmurs, we categorize the diseases. Then coming to the CNS examination includes, first thing is like higher mental function, then comes cranial nerve, motor system, and sensory system. So under higher mental function, you have to see for appearance of the child, then how is the behavior, then what is the then how is the memory, whether the patient is conscious, whether the patient is having any delirium feature, etc. All these things you have to see in higher mental function. Again, speech also very, very important. That also you should see in higher mental function, whether there is any aphasia, dysarthria, whether the aphasia is due to some sensory or motor problem. All these things you should see in higher mental function. Then coming to the cranial nerves, there are around 12 cranial nerves, 12 pairs of cranial nerves. You have to examine this. I hope you all are aware about it. Then about the motor system, you have to see for the power of the muscles to differentiate between whether it is an upper motor neuron lesion or lower motor neuron lesion, whether there is hypertonia, hypotonia, and about the tone, again, to differentiate this UMN or LMN. Then deep tendon reflexes. Reflexes is also must that you should see here. And again, in cranial nerve examination, never forget to see Rines and Rebus, whether the patient is having some ear problems. It is very important. Most of the time we forget to examine this because we have tuning fork in our clinic, but we forget to use it or examine the patient. And sensory include pain, touch, temperature, crude touch, fine touch, etc. We have to see. Again, by giving a small prick or something, we can see for the pain. Then stereognosis, graphesthesia, etc. should be seen in sensory. And also Romberg test also examine in case of sensory system. So this is what about the CNS. So that's what coming to the end of examination. So, so these are the systemic examination which we summarize here. So we have done with respiratory system, CVS, CNS, GIT, and skin, as we told in the general physical examination. I have already told about skin examination. So we should be. So what I would like to tell you here is, even when you get a normal patient with some small symptoms, never make sure that you examine that patient also. Let it be normal. We learn from the normal things, so that when you find abnormal things, you will be good enough to examine the abnormal patients. So never skip examination in any case, so that practice makes you a perfect doctor. That's what I would like to tell you. Here I summarize examination track. If you have any doubt, please ask.
You can share your doubts in the chat box now. Before
Sorry,
that,
I was little fast. I was running in short of time. I'm sorry if I was fast.
No, okay. I understand well. We know that the time is short. Before answering the doubts, we have an announcement. We are giving you an opportunity to present your short cases during these webinars. 5 minutes will be allotted to those who are interested. The details are shared in the relevant WhatsApp and Telegram groups. Kindly refer to those groups. You can present your own paper. Please note that point. And in the evening, we have another wonderful session with Dr. C. Padmanabhan. He will be sharing his clinical experiences. He's a very senior doctor and a very popular doctor in Kannur. He has a lot of clinical tips with him, a lot of experiences to share. So please do join at 8:30. The session starts at 8:30 and the link will be open 15 minutes prior to that. So please, we request you to join that session too. Now let's move on to the doubts.
Hello, I have a case about cholecystitis. I would like to tell you about that. I forgot to tell that regarding examination part. Hello.
Yes, doctor. You can hear.
Actually, we had a case of a 15-year-old girl. She was in 10th standard that time. She came with recurrent abdominal pain, and her mother was frequently telling, "Doctor, she is in 10th standard. It's only because of her tension. There is nothing like that." But every day she's complaining about recurrent abdominal pain. So we had a doubt and we examined her abdomen. We found that Murphy sinus positive. So Murphy sinus positive is seen mostly in cholecystitis case. So we didn't take any chance. We directly give for investigation. So after investigation, it was diagnosed as cholecystitis, that is gallbladder stone with gallbladder stone. So we gave them Bell and Carter's Marianas. So that's what the case about importance of investigation, what I would like to tell you. If you think that, okay, this girl is only 15-year-old, and we usually expect these kind of cases above a 40-year fat ladies. But if you examine a case, that's what, if you examine a case in a proper or systematic way, this kind of diagnosis you are not going to, you will get all, I mean, you will not miss this kind of cases. So make sure that you examine all the case, never prejudice that, okay, this is seen only in this ages, etc. So that's what I want to tell about the importance of examination. And she is better now with Bell and Cardes Marianas.
Now, can we move on to the doubts?
Yeah, of course.
There is a doubt. What will be the symptom of PAH in children? Is it a complicated condition?
What is it? Hello?
Hello. PAH. Is it
PAH, portal hypertension.
Is it, no,
I'm not
PAH,
clear, actually.
right? Is it para-aortic heave? Dr. Justina, please tell us what's a form of PAH.
Hello, is it portal hypertension? PHN.
It's written PAH. It's, the doubt is raised by Dr. Justina. Dr. Justina, okay. Is pulmonary arterial hypertension.
Okay, pulmonary arterial hypertension. Okay, in children. I'm sorry, I didn't come across such cases. If I find, I'll clear you. Okay. So far, I didn't find such case here, even during my practice. Maybe some case of emphysema features and all, they may present. I don't know. I'll refer and tell you.
Dr. Lakshmi Prasanna is asking, please share the potency mostly used in children. Dr. Ifana?
Potency mostly used in children. Usually 1 etc. Hello, can you hear? Usually we start with 200 potency. If the remedy is clear or the indication is clear, we start with 1 potency also.
Dr. Divya is asking, how can we differentiate the crying of a child with underlying disease or discomfort?
See, crying of the child, there are different causes. First and foremost thing you ask the mother is whether baby is hungry or not. If the baby is hungry, it cries like that. If the baby cries for continuously for hours, then we can understand there is an underlying pathology. If the baby cry and stop for some 10 minutes, etc., there will be some kind of colic and all, we can understand. And if baby is crying for hours, you can think about intestinal obstruction, volvulus, etc. Depending upon the abdomen, you have to see for the abdomen. If there is muscle guarding, etc., then you have to see for this underlying pathology, and see for the temperature of the abdomen. You can see the ears. You can see for the lymph nodes in the throat if it is because of tonsillitis and abdominal pain. If the baby is better when you take the baby into your shoulder, then you can think about the abdominal conditions. Are you clear, doctor?
Jeez. Is it possible to start dentition at 6 months of age? And somebody has cleared the doubt. 6 months onwards, in infants, it starts to.
What is it possible?
To start the dentition at 6 months.
See, one thing I would like to tell you about dentition. As far as in India, our dentition usually delay according to Indian standards. From 1 year, the baby start erupting first teeth. It seems that in books and all they give about 6 months, but now according to our Indian standard, dentition will not start at 6 months of age. It's actually normal. Never think about delayed dentition in 6 months of age of a child. Is it clear, doctor? Hello?
I think it's clear. She has not replied. Now, colic remedies. Dr. Vijala has asked. Colic remedies.
Colic remedies, we have many remedies depending upon the type of the colic. First thing is like bell we have, then colocin we have, plumbum met, then chamomilla, coffea. All those pain remedies you can take for colic depending upon the symptomatology the child present. If the colic is because of some food allergies or depending upon the change of the food, you can think of those abdominal remedies like Nexomica and all those Lycopodium, China, etc. So it mainly depends upon the symptom the patient presents, and also depending upon the ailments. You can ask whether if it is a infant, you can ask the mother whether the mother had taken some extra food or some food from the outside. If the mother takes some outside food or some hotel food, then with that also the baby develop colic. So depending upon that, you can differentiate. Mainly chamomilla or group remedies come under that. Chamomilla, Sina, coffea, etc.
There's a doubt from Dr. Afroz Khan. It's about dentitional diarrhea. How many days does it last?
Dentitional diarrhea.
If dentition starts, for how many days does infant suffer from diarrhea? That's also. I think how many days does it last? That's what
it depends upon different child actually. As such, the days and all is not given in the book. I've read about that. Find some particular.
How to inquire about the developmental delays and milestones?
To the patient. Okay. I'm not clear actually. About history you're asking?
Yeah, inquire. I think so. Yes. How to inquire about developmental delays?
See, development delay, we should first of all we should know about the proper ages of milestone, like motor development. All these things have particular milestones are there. I mean, in 3 months the baby should grow. I mean, roll down. Then 6 months the baby should grow. I mean, sit without support, with support. Different things are there. So you have to know about the normal thing first. Then you can ask the patient's mother how is this, how it happened to the baby. What about the milestone? Whether it is normal, whether the baby sit without support during 8 months, 6 months, whether the baby sit without support, the baby started walking without support at 8 months. All these things you can ask. So first you should know the normal milestones which happen in each month. Then you can enroll in the systematic way. Then you can understand the developmental detail. As I told about dentition is different in case of our Indian standard. You can wait till 1 year. From 6 months to 1 year, within 6 to 1 year, the dentition can occur.
What about the atopic dermatitis and remedies and potency?
Atopic dermatitis, actually doctors, atopic dermatitis as such we don't treat now. We take whole case and we should see the constitution of the patient. As such we will not tell the remedy. So you can, I mean, depending upon the case, you can give the remedy, depending upon the characteristic symptom, etc. There are remedies like sulfur, then there are many remedies, right? Sulfur or salt, graphitis. Graphitis we give in cases like thick greasy discharge, sulfur with severe itching, depending upon the modalities. So as such, we will not give medicine. Like atopic dermatitis is this medicine, then it is not homeopathy. Is it clear, doctor?
I hope it is clear. I haven't received a reply.
Yeah.
The doctor who has asked about the dentitional diarrhea has made his question more clear.
Yeah.
The baby is losing weight due to dentitional diarrhea and the parents are worried.
Then they can start medication. Then it will not be normal dentitional diarrhea. There will be some underlying cause for that. You have to take the case in detail. You can treat such cases with constitutional remedy. We have remedies for dentitional diarrhea. And also they can ask for some investigations. They can see, I mean, normal weight for the age and all, they can compare and they can give medicine depending upon that, if the parents are worried about it.
There is a question, till what time we are supposed to advise mother to feed the baby? I hope, I understand that till what age?
Till what age? Okay, till till 6 months the mother have to feed the baby exclusively, and usually in India they continue till 2 years, and those working mothers and all, they stop and from 6 months onwards if the baby should be formula fed. But if the mother is having good amount of milk, they can continue till the age of 2 years. After 1 year, the quantity of milk the quality of milk will be not that as that of the before.
The time is almost up, but there are a few more questions. Is there any specific rubrics, remedies for twins?
Oh, I don't know. I'll refer.
Okay. How to deal with hydrocephalus babies and remedies for?
I'll reply in Telegram group if hydrocephalus babies. Actually,
yes.
I will see about it. I didn't come across such cases. I'm sorry, doctor. If I find, I will reply in Telegram group. Hydrocephalus usually because of happens due to some CSF abnormalities, and it is actually a serious problem. You have to see for the underlying cause. It could be due to some increased intracranial pressure, maybe some tumors, etc. Underlying cause should be identified. So I'll read about it and I will tell you.
Please suggest any remedy for nocturnal enuresis for a 10-year-old girl.
See, nocturnal enuresis till 10 years is actually normal, but according to the book, it is told that till 5 years, the baby attains the control of bladder. So from 5 to 10 years, you can start some constitutional treatment. As such a specific remedy, I cannot tell because our homeopathy is different. We see individualization. And there are more remedies like equisitum, and many remedies are there. So depending upon the symptomatology, you can say. Just for a 10-year-old girl, I cannot tell like that. So you have to see for the constitution. Nocturnal aneurysm is actually, we can treat that case beautifully. But it is actually normal. If they wait for 1 year and all, they will attain control.
And now the time is almost up. It's already 3:32. Shall we close the session? Dr. Bijoy?
Yes, doctor. Am I audible?
Yes. I invite Dr. Bijoy to deliver vote of thanks.
Yes. It's a very good session, Dr. Aikuna. We are very happy that young doctors like you are ready to share your experiences to all our doctor community. We expect more such useful sessions from you in coming days. So on behalf of IHMA, Kannur, I express our sincere thanks to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I like to thank all the attendees from all over India who attended the webinar. And I also like to extend my thanks to Dr. Saji, State President IHME, Dr. Deepu CS, and their wholehearted cooperation for hosting the webinar. I also like to extend my thanks to my colleagues, Dr. Vinay Uttaman and Dr. Sneha Pradeep, for their excellent coordination. And once more, I think thanks to all. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Please do remember to join the next session, which will start at 8:30. The link will be active from 8:15 onwards. Thank you, one and all.